Today we are rethinking education. And to rethink, sometimes we need to reflect on where we've been. So, where have we been? Most of us came from a fairly traditional school. You remember, the teacher stood at the front of the room giving the lessons of the day. The students sat in rows facing forward. The walls were decorated with pretty paper. Oh, remember those inspirational posters? The ones that reminded you to do your best and reach for the stars? We turned out okay, didn't we?
I think so. Although the typical classroom hasn't changed all that much from what Heidi's just described, we found the students in our classroom have. Throughout our past few years of teaching, we've noticed increases in anxiety levels, students who are unable to focus for any length of time, students who are unaware of their true emotional states, and students who lack that sense of internal calm. God, it sounds so bleak when I say it like that, but we knew we wanted to help them. So as fate would have it, a couple of years ago, we had a parent in our class who was working extensively in the area of social emotional growth. And she came to us one day very excited. She had heard about this new concept, self-regulation. She had some activities for us to try. Were we interested? Well, the next thing I knew, I was wriggling around on the floor of my classroom like a snake. My students were following along behind me. Now, when we got up from this activity, a couple of things happened. Our classroom floor had never looked so clean. I needed to buy a new shirt. And my students got up and went back to their work calm and focused. Now, the most interesting part of this was that a couple of our students, who traditionally speaking had trouble focusing and self-regulating, would come to us after that on a regular basis begging us, can we please do that snake action break thing? We like the way it makes our bodies feel. That's when I knew I wanted to know more about self-regulation. What had happened for those students and why?
Suddenly we had a name and a theory, self-regulation, the ability to control one's body and behavior according to your situation. If you're at home watching the hockey game, you can stand up, yell at the TV, scream, but not so much in the middle of a staff meeting. As adults, most of us have developed these strategies to help our bodies. Now we wanted to help our students do the same.
So the first thing we did was attend a variety of workshops hosted by the guru of self-regulation, Stuart Shanker. It was there that we met other teachers who were also involved in the first wave of self-regulation. We began collaborating on different ideas, and we quickly realized there wasn't going to be a step-by-step quick fix. Nobody was going to give us a manual and say, here's what you do. It was going to be more about looking at the individual needs of each student in our classroom.
So the first thing we did was to look at the layout of our classroom. So down came that pretty paper. No more posters. We were no longer reaching for the stars. We tucked supplies away and our desks were replaced with tables. Then we added some short stools, some noise canceling headsets, of course a variety of balls and wiggle cushions, and a few office spaces. We were out on a limb. We were stepping out of our comfort zone. Or were we just losing our minds? We were nervous. And then they came. Nothing happened. Nobody asked where their inspirational posters were, and not a single student commented on the bare look of the room. As the weeks went on, and we introduced different strategies and tools, some were accepted and some were rejected. But the conversations that surrounded their decisions was fascinating. They liked the calm feel in the room. They liked that they could move. They liked that now they had a language for asking others for quiet space. They even liked that now they had an obligation to inquire into their own self-regulation needs. A visitor to our school commented on the recognizable difference. He said, they seem so calm and focused. Now, he had caught us on a particularly good day.
So at the same time as we were changing the physical appearance of our classroom, we began to look at our students differently. Educators, I'd like you to think about a student you may have had in your class in the past that may have required you yourself to go home and perhaps do a little quiet meditation or self-regulation over a glass of red wine. Parents, think about that moment at the dinner table when your child completely melts down. Why might that be? So instead of looking at the behavior as the problem, we began to look at the behavior and what it was communicating through the lens of self-regulation. What does this child need right now? Why isn't that need being met, and how could we help them? Let me give you an example. I'd like you to meet Olivia. Now, Olivia is a student in our class who typically loves inquiry discussions. So I was really surprised one day when she wiggled her way to the back of the carpet and curled herself up into a little tiny ball under one of the stools we had. Now, in the past, I might have looked at her and said, Olivia, you need to get out from under the stool, please, and come sit down on the carpet and rejoin the conversation. But this time I stopped myself and I looked at her through the lens of self-regulation. Why was she doing this? So I asked her, and she thought about it, and then she was able to tell me, you know what? I don't like the way my body feels when all those other kids are surrounding me on the carpet. I just need some personal space. Well, I thought I died and gone to self-regulation heaven. Finally, here was a student who was able to articulate what her body needed. We now had to put that into a socially acceptable action. She chose to sit on top of the stool instead, and we carried on with our conversation. Now, this was a big moment for me as a teacher because we'd been working on self-regulation for months. Seeing Olivia able to identify what her body needed and the empowerment that came with that was career-changing for me.
For me, that aha moment came as I was rising from my desk to ask Sarah to please sit down. The French teacher was introducing some new information, and she was standing at the back of the group, practically dancing on her toes. Not a single part of her was still. As I rose, I stopped, and I realized that actually she was completely engaged. She was answering questions, and she was listening to the teacher, all from the tip of her toes. As I thought about this, I obviously stopped, and it was clear that Sarah was meeting her need to move while not distracting her peers. I thought, fantastic, we're on the right road.
So it's important as educators that when you introduce self-regulation into your classroom, you're authentic. You need to make sure that the tools and strategies you invite are going to allow you yourself to remain calm and self-regulated. For example, if Heidi and I had a student in our class who needed to constantly move or have high-intensity action breaks, we really had to ask ourselves, would we be okay with that trampoline at the back of the classroom or a bouncy ball? No way. But there's a teacher down the hall from us who was completely comfortable with those strategies in her classroom. When self-regulation is working, your class should not look like a three-ring circus. Every child should, technically speaking, be able to figure out what tools or strategies are going to work for them that will allow them to get their work done and be calm and focused while keeping in mind that they are still involved in a community of learners. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, this is not an easy thing to achieve, but when it works, it's transformative.
So what does calm look like for you? Now leave your beach, your bubble bath, or wherever that quiet place may be. Now think about what that felt like when you were 7. Can you do it? Children are just as unique as adults, and it's hard to find that space in our busy world. For us, our educational, teachable moment snuck up on us. It wasn't planned. We had our students out on an outdoor educational field trip, and they were in the woods doing an observation. They came back excited and full of connections. They had linked that feeling of calm to their experience. This was fantastic, for wasn't the goal for them to be ready to learn? That feeling of calm is appealing, so they reach for it again and again as they use those strategies and see the benefits.
So now what? We're often asked as educators, does self-regulation transfer outside of the classroom? Absolutely. What we've learned on our journey is that self-regulation is more than just achieving calm. It's a life skill. Everyone, adults and children alike, can really benefit from understanding what their true feelings are, knowing what behavior expectations look like in different situations, and then feeling empowered to act according to those guidelines. I'll give you an example from our classroom. This is Mila. Now, Mila would become anxious during independent work times, and she would bite down on the cuffs of her sleeve to the point where her shirts had holes throughout, the cuff. And so when we talked to her about this one day, she said, you know what, I just like the feeling of biting down on something when I work. Okay, well, the solution to her problem was gum. Gum would enable her to bite down on something, not ruin her shirt, and no one would notice what it was she was doing. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking right now, my school has a no gum policy. Luckily for us, our administrator was very supportive in the role that gum would play in self-regulation. Mila would simply pop a piece into her mouth anytime she needed to and carry on with her day. Now, this small shift in what she was doing gave her such a huge sense of empowerment. She could use this strategy at any point in her life that caused her stress or anxiety.
So let's consider what this looks like as we get older. I did notice that nobody here today brought their bouncy ball or their wiggle cushion or their quiet cone. But strategies transfer into socially acceptable behaviors. So what does work for you? Are you bouncing your leg, twirling your hair? Is the guy next to you playing with his phone or a paperclip? Don't look around too much, but you get the idea. Thanks to Stuart, Shanker, and the other first wave teachers, we're rethinking how to help our students make those connections between what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish. Whether you're 5 or you're 50, when you know what you need, you have those tools to function, you can relax, stay calm, and interact with others.
The lens of self-regulation requires us as educators to be curious. What do we really need to do to engage our students? What tools and strategies can we provide them with that will allow them to remain calm and function in today's very busy and challenging world? As you leave here today, we encourage you to start rethinking your own self-regulation journey. Step outside of your comfort zone a little bit, take the plunge, get ready to stand, jump, wiggle, and learn. Thank you.